The twin suns of Voss Prime cast long shadows across the rust-colored sand as Captain Emma Kane stepped from the diplomatic shuttle. The heat hit her like a physical blow, even through her environmental suit's cooling systems. Behind her, Lieutenant Beck and Sergeant Maya formed a protective triangle, their weapons holstered but ready. "Remember," Emma spoke into her cum, "we're here to establish peaceful relations. The Calthak Empire claims to control 17 systems. If we can secure safe passage for our colony ships, we avoid a war neither side wants." The Calthak delegation waited near a cluster of obsidian spires that jutted from the desert floor like ancient fingers. Their leader, a being called Commander Vex, stood nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous armor that seemed to grow from his skin. His 4 arms moved independently, each ending in claws that could shred metal. "Humans," Vex's voice came through, the translation device sounding like grinding stone. "You arrive as promised." Emma approached with measured steps, her diplomatic training keeping her posture non-threatening despite every instinct screaming danger. The Calthak had requested this meeting on neutral ground, a dead world between their territories and human space, but something felt wrong. "Commander Vex," Emma began, "Earth's United Fleet is honored by your invitation. We hope this marks the beginning of mutual cooperation between our species." The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Cooperation, yes. We have studied your species extensively, Captain Kane. Your neural pathways are unique. The energy patterns your minds generate are unlike anything we've encountered in the galaxy." Maya shifted almost imperceptibly, her hand drifting toward her sidearm. Emma caught the movement and gave the slightest shake of her head. "Our minds?" Emma asked, maintaining her diplomatic tone while her combat instincts awakened. "I'm not sure I understand." "Of course you don't," Vex replied, his 4 arms spreading wide. "How could you know that human consciousness burns brighter than any star? Your species has no idea what you truly are." The desert around them suddenly came alive with movement. Calthak warriors emerged from concealed positions, their weapons trained on the small human delegation. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized they'd walked into a trap. "Neural energy," Vex continued, his voice taking on a hungry quality. "Your species produces it in quantities that could power our entire civilization. One human mind can generate more usable energy than a dozen of our own. You understand now why we requested this meeting." Emma's mind raced through tactical options. They were outnumbered 20 to 1, surrounded and cut off from their shuttle. But something in Vex's tone told her this wasn't about conquest, it was about harvest. "You're not seeking cooperation," she said quietly. "You're seeking livestock." "Such crude terms." Vex clicked his mandibles. "We prefer sustainable resource management. Your species will serve a greater purpose than you could ever achieve on your own." The first energy blast caught Emma in the shoulder, spinning her and sending her crashing into the sand. Pain exploded through her body as her suit's medical systems triggered emergency protocols. Through the chaos, she heard Beck and Maya return fire, their weapons' sharp cracks mixing with the alien energy weapons' whine. Maya's scream cut through the battle noise, followed by Beck's grunt of pain. Emma tried to push herself up, but her left arm wouldn't respond. Blood seeped through her suit's emergency patches, and the crimson sand beneath her grew darker. "Disable, don't kill," Vex commanded his warriors. "Damaged neural pathways reduce the energy output. We need them functional." Emma's vision blurred as she lay in the sand, her blood mixing with the alien dust. The sounds of battle faded to distant echoes. Her team lay motionless nearby, their suits' life signs flickering weakly on her helmet display. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe, it's free, and it helps us bring these frontlines to you. Vex approached her prone form, his claws clicking against the hardened sand. "The great Captain Kane, your military records make for fascinating reading. 17 successful campaigns, never defeated. But here you lie, broken and bleeding on alien soil." Emma's eyes focused on the alien commander with difficulty. Her suit's combat stims were beginning to take effect, dulling the pain but sharpening her awareness. She could feel her heart rate stabilizing, her breathing becoming controlled. "Your species has potential," Vex continued, apparently enjoying his monologue. "But you lack the wisdom to use it properly. We will teach you your place in the greater order of things." Through the haze of pain and medication, Emma began to catalog details. The Calthek moved with confidence born of assumed superiority. Their weapons were powerful but bulky, requiring both hands to operate effectively. Their attention had shifted from her to the surrounding area. Confident that 3 wounded humans posed no further threat, they had made their first mistake. They didn't understand what bleeding in the sand meant to a human. They didn't know that. Pain was just another form of information. That desperation was humanity's greatest teacher. Emma closed her eyes and began to plan. The Calthek medic scanner hummed over Emma's body, its blue light casting alien shadows across the sand. She remained perfectly still, controlling her breathing to mimic unconsciousness, while her enhanced hearing picked up every word of their conversation. "Neural activity is stabilizing," the medic reported to Commander Vex. "The damage is mostly superficial. Should provide excellent energy yields once we reach the processing facility." "And the others?" Vex asked, his attention already shifting to more pressing concerns. "The male has internal bleeding, but our readings show human physiology is remarkably redundant. Multiple organs can fail without causing death. The female took a direct hit to her torso. She appears to be in shock." Emma's tactical mind processed this information while her body's natural systems continued their work. The Calthek were wrong about several things. Human shock wasn't always medical trauma, sometimes it was tactical positioning. Her suit's biomonitors showed that both Beck and Maya were alive, their vitals stronger than the aliens suspected. Humans, Emma realized, were built for survival in ways these creatures couldn't comprehend. Her species had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily predators, disease, weather, geological catastrophes. They had learned to endure, to adapt, to keep fighting when any rational being would surrender. "Load them onto the transport," Vex ordered. "The sooner we begin extraction, the better. High-quality neural energy degrades if the subject experiences prolonged trauma." As rough alien hands lifted her, Emma allowed herself to be moved while memorizing every detail. The Calthek transport ship was clearly designed for cargo rather than passengers, perfect for what they assumed would be docile human livestock. The holding area was a simple metal box with basic life support. They dumped her next to Beck and Maya, who both appeared unconscious. But Emma caught the slight movement of Maya's fingers, a silent signal they'd developed during their years of working together. Her team was awake, aware, and waiting. The transport's engines hummed to life, and Emma felt the familiar sensation of acceleration. Through the small viewport, she watched Vos Prime's surface fall away. But instead of despair, she felt something cold and calculating settle into her mind. The Calthek had studied human records, but they had missed something crucial. They had read about human victories, human tactics, human technology. But they hadn't understood the source of human strength, the ability to turn disadvantage into advantage, to find opportunity in the darkest moments. Emma's shoulder throbbed, where the energy blasted struck, but the pain was becoming useful. It kept her alert, focused, angry. The medical nanites in her bloodstream were working overtime, knitting damaged tissue and managing infection. Her body was healing itself even as her captors congratulated themselves on their easy victory. The transport's thin walls, she could hear the Calthek crew discussing their prize. 17 humans would be processed from this initial harvest, they said. The neural energy would power their war fleet for months. Earth's location had been transmitted to the Empire before the ambush. More harvests would follow, but they had made another mistake. They assumed that capturing 3 humans meant capturing 3 individuals. They didn't understand that humans weren't just pack hunters. They were something far more dangerous. They were social creatures who would die for each other, who became exponentially more effective when threatened as a group. Emma's fingers found the small plasma cutter hidden in her suit's maintenance pouch. The tool was designed for equipment repair, but human ingenuity had always been about making tools serve multiple purposes. She began working on the magnetic restraints, her movements so subtle that even her own team might not notice. The transport shuddered as it entered hyperspace. Emma smiled despite the pain. The Calthek thought they were bringing their prize home, but they had actually just given 3 human soldiers exactly what they needed: time, proximity, and motivation. Maya's hand moved again, this time tapping out a message in their old code. "Ready when you are, Captain." Beck's response came a moment later, barely visible finger movements against his restraints. Weapons secured. "Waiting for your signal." Emma looked out at the alien stars streaming past and felt something that would have terrified the Calthek if they could have recognized it. It wasn't hope or determination or even anger, it was certainty. The absolute, unshakable certainty that she was about to teach these aliens why humanity had survived every challenge their homeworld had thrown at them. The bleeding had stopped. The real fight was about to begin. The transport's artificial gravity shifted as they dropped out of hyperspace, and Emma felt the familiar sensation of approaching a large gravitational body. Through the viewport, she could see the Calthek processing station, a massive orbital facility that looked like a metallic cancer growing around an asteroid. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Commander Vex's voice came through the intercom. "The Nexus station. We've processed over 10,000 sentient beings here. Each one contributed to the glory of the Calthek Empire." Emma's plasma cutter had finished its work on the restraints, but she remained motionless. The element of surprise was everything now. She watched as docking clamps engaged the transport, feeling the vibration through the deck plates. "The humans will be processed immediately," Vex continued to someone outside their view. "Their neural patterns are too valuable to risk degradation. Begin preparation for extraction." The transport doors hissed open, and Emma caught her first glimpse of the processing facility. It was a nightmare of surgical precision, gleaming metal corridors lined with holding cells, each one containing a different alien species, some she recognized from diplomatic databases, others were completely unknown. All of them had the same hollow, defeated look of beings who had given up hope, but the Calthek had made their third mistake. They assumed that because other species had surrendered to their fate, humans would do the same. They didn't understand that humans were the species that had looked at every impossible challenge their homeworld could create and responded with a simple phrase: "Hold my beer." As the alien guards lifted her from the transport, Emma let her head roll naturally, maintaining the pretense of unconsciousness while mapping the facility's layout. The corridor stretched for approximately 200 meters, with guard stations every 50 meters. The aliens were confident, casual. They'd done this so many times that it had become routine. Beck and Maya were carried behind her, and Emma could hear them being placed in adjacent cells. The Calthek weren't taking any special precautions beyond basic restraints. Why would they? What could 3 wounded humans possibly do against a facility designed to hold entire species? "Place them in processing bay 17, ordered a new voice, the facility's supervisor, from the sound of authority in his tone. "Begin neural mapping immediately. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." Emma was placed on a cold metal table, restraints clicking into place around her wrists and ankles. But the plasma cutter had done its work perfectly. The restraints would hold under casual inspection, but would release with the slightest pressure in the right direction. "Fascinating," the supervisor continued, his voice closer now. "Look at these neural patterns. The energy density is extraordinary. No wonder the Empire wants these creatures alive." Through barely opened eyes, Emma watched the aliens work. They moved with practiced efficiency, setting up scanning equipment and neural monitors. But they were making their 4th mistake. They were treating her like a specimen rather than a predator. The neural scanner hummed to life, and Emma felt a strange tingling sensation as it mapped her brain patterns. But instead of fear, she felt something else: opportunity. The scanner was feeding information directly into the facility's computer systems, and where information flowed, other things could follow. "Begin extraction countdown," the supervisor ordered. "We'll start with the female. Her patterns show the most promise." That was their 5th mistake. They had just told her exactly how long she had to act. Emma's eyes snapped open, and she saw the supervisor's mandibles click in surprise. But by then, it was too late. The restraints released with a soft hiss, and Emma rolled off the table in a single fluid motion. The plasma cutter was in her hand before the nearest guard could react. The first alien went down with a precise cut to his weapon arm. The second managed to sound an alarm before Emma's improvised weapon took out his primary. Neural cluster. The supervisor scrambled for a panic button, but Emma was already moving, her injured shoulder forgotten in the flood of combat adrenaline. "Now!" she shouted, and the facility erupted into chaos. Beck and Maya had been waiting for her signal, their own restraints already compromised. Maya's cell door exploded outward as she activated the emergency release from inside a safety feature the Calthac had never imagined prisoners would understand. Beck emerged like a force of nature, a salvaged alien weapon in each hand. "How?" The supervisor gasped, his forearms clutching at a wound that should have been fatal, but somehow wasn't. "You were unconscious, defeated." Emma stood over him, her plasma cutter casting blue light across her face. "That's mistake number 6. You thought unconscious meant helpless. You thought defeated meant finished. You thought human meant weak." The facility's alarms were screaming now, but Emma's team was already moving. They had studied the layout during their brief captivity, and now they put that knowledge to use. Beck headed for the armory, Maya for the communication center, and Emma for the central processing core. "You want to know about human neural energy?" Emma asked the supervisor as she worked. "Let me show you what happens when you threaten us." The facility's own systems turned against it as Emma's combat experience met alien technology. Doors that should have locked them in became weapons. Life support systems that should have protected the facility became delivery methods for improvised chemical weapons. The processing station's greatest strength, its automated efficiency, became its greatest weakness. Within minutes, the hunters had become the hunted. And the Calthac were about to learn why humans had earned their place among the stars. The processing facility's central computer core hummed with alien architecture, its crystalline matrices pulsing with stored data from thousands of harvested minds. Emma's fingers flew over the interface, her suit's translation software working overtime to decode the Calthac systems. "Maya, report," she spoke into her com while simultaneously rerouting power from the facility's defensive systems. "Communication center secured," Maya's voice crackled back. "I've got bad news, Captain. This place isn't just a processing facility, it's a military depot. They've got 17 warships docked here, and I'm reading massive troop movements throughout the station." Emma smiled grimly as she accessed the facility's prisoner database. "Then we'll give them something to move toward." "Beck, what's your status?" "Armory's a gold mine," Beck replied, and Emma could hear weapons fire in the background. "These aliens have been collecting trophies from every species they've processed. I've got enough firepower to level a city block, but we've got company. Incoming, multiple squads converging on all our positions." "Copy that," Emma said, her fingers never stopping their work. "Hold positions and prepare for Phase 2. The supervisor, still bleeding from his wounds, laughed despite his pain. "Phase 2? You think this is some kind of tactical exercise? You're 3 humans against an entire battle station. Even if you somehow escape, the Empire knows about Earth now. Your entire species is doomed." Emma paused her work to look at him. "You're making mistake number 7. You think this is about escape." The truth was, Emma had realized something the moment she'd accessed the facility's systems. The Nexus station wasn't just a processing center, it was a hub for the entire Calthac neural energy network. Every harvested mind, every processed species, every scrap of stolen consciousness flowed through this facility before being distributed throughout the Empire, which meant that if someone could reverse the flow. "Maya, I need you to access the communication array's power coupling," Emma said, her voice taking on the focused tone her team knew meant she was about to attempt something insane. "Captain, that coupling is designed to handle the neural energy of entire planets. If we reverse it, we turn their greatest weapon against them," Emma finished. "Every mind they've stolen, every consciousness they've harvested, it's all still here, stored in quantum matrices. We can give it back." The supervisor's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You can't. The power requirements alone would destroy the station. You'd kill yourselves along with everyone else." Emma's smile was cold as winter. "Mistake number 8. You think we're afraid to die, but death wasn't the plan. Death was the backup plan. The real plan was something the Calthek couldn't comprehend. It was about hope. About showing every enslaved species in the galaxy that their captors could be beaten. About proving that the Empire's technological superiority meant nothing when faced with human determination. Beck, I need you to create a distraction. Something big enough to draw their main forces away from the central core. How big are we talking? Beck asked, and Emma could hear the grin in his voice. Remember that ammunition depot on Kepler 7? The one that took out half the mountain? I like the way you think, Captain. Give me 5 minutes. Emma turned back to the computer core, her fingers dancing across alien interfaces as she began the most complex hack of her career. The facility's stolen minds were stored in quantum matrices, their consciousness reduced to pure energy. But consciousness, Emma had learned, was more than just energy. It was will desire, the fundamental force that drove beings to fight for survival. And if there was one thing humans understood, it was how to weaponize will. The first explosion shook the station as Beck's distraction went off, then another, then a dozen more in rapid succession. Emma could hear the supervisor's forces scrambling to respond, their disciplined movements dissolving into chaos as they tried to counter multiple threats simultaneously. Phase 2 initiated, Maya reported. I've got the communication array configured for neural energy transmission. But Emma, the power levels we're talking about will be enough, Emma said firmly. Trust me. She began the reversal process, and the facility's lights flickered as massive amounts of energy started flowing backward through the system. The stolen consciousness of 10,000 beings began to wake up, their quantum matrices resonating. With newfound purpose, the supervisor screamed as the first wave hit him, not physical pain, but something far worse. The weight of 10,000 minds, all focused on a single goal, freedom. The other Calthek throughout the facility began to stagger as the accumulated will of their victims pressed against their consciousness. This is impossible, the supervisor gasped. Neural energy doesn't work this way. It can't be weaponized like this. Emma stood over him, her plasma cutter steady in her hand. Mistake number 9. You thought consciousness was just energy. You never understood that consciousness is choice. And every being you've enslaved just chose to fight back. The station shuddered as the neural feedback loop reached critical mass. Throughout the facility, Calthek warriors dropped their weapons and clutched their heads, overwhelmed by the psychic backlash of their own crimes. The tide had turned, and the hunters were about to become the hunted. But Emma wasn't finished. She had one more surprise for the Empire, one final lesson in why humanity had earned its place among the stars. The neural cascade reached its peak as Emma made the final connections, and the Nexus station transformed into something the Calthek had never imagined possible, a weapon of liberation. Throughout the facility, the stolen consciousness of 10,000 beings flowed through the quantum matrices, each one adding their voice to a chorus of defiance that echoed through the station's neural network. Commander Vex stumbled into the central processing core, his forearms clutching at his head as the psychic feedback tore through his mind. Behind him, what remained of his elite guard staggered like beings who had forgotten how to walk. What have you done? He gasped, his voice barely audible above the harmonics of the neural cascade. Emma stood before the central console, her hands still working the alien interface even as energy arced between the crystalline matrices. I've given back what you stole. Every mind, every consciousness, every spark of will that you thought you owned. They're all free now. Free? Vex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. They're dead. You've killed them all. The neural matrices can't sustain that level of feedback. No, Emma said quietly. They're not dead. They're choosing. The truth was something the Calthek couldn't comprehend. The consciousness stored in their quantum matrices wasn't just energy, it was the accumulated experience of thousands of species, their collective wisdom and determination. And when faced with a choice between oblivion and vengeance, they had chosen a third option. They had chosen to teach. Maya's voice crackled through the comm system. Captain, we've got massive power fluctuations throughout the station. Whatever you're doing, it's affecting every system simultaneously. That's the point, Emma replied, her fingers never stopping their work. Beck, what's your status? 17 Calthek warships just went dark, Beck reported, his voice filled with amazement. "Their neural guidance systems are completely fried. And Captain, the prisoners are escaping, all of them. Every cell in the facility just opened simultaneously." Emma smiled as she watched the facility's surveillance feeds. Throughout the station, numbers of dozens of alien species were emerging from their cells, their movements uncertain but determined. The Calthac guards weren't fighting back, they couldn't. The neural feedback had left them helpless, overwhelmed by the collective will of their victims. "Please," the supervisor whispered, his voice barely audible. "Turn it off. The cascade is spreading through our communication network. It's reaching our homeworld. Our entire civilization will survive," Emma finished, "if you learn from this moment." She stepped away from the console, her work complete. The neural cascade had reached a stable equilibrium, no longer growing but no longer dissipating. The stolen consciousness of the Calthac's victims had found a new purpose, not destruction, but education. Your empire built its power on the assumption that consciousness was just another resource to be harvested, Emma said, her voice carrying the weight of judgment. But consciousness is choice. And every being you enslaved has chosen to show you another way. Vex fell to his knees, his forearms trembling. "What way? What are you talking about?" Emma knelt beside him, her plasma cutter set aside. "Mercy." The word hung in the air like a foreign concept. Around them, the facility systems hummed with new purpose. The processing equipment that had once stolen minds now transmitted something else. The accumulated wisdom of 10,000 species. Their collective knowledge of cooperation, symbiosis, and mutual aid. "Your species has powerful technology," Emma continued, "but you've never learned to use it responsibly. The consciousness you've stolen, they're not seeking revenge. They're offering to teach you how to be better. Teach us?" Vex's voice was barely a whisper. "We are the Calthac Empire. We have conquered 17 systems. Your children playing with weapons you don't understand," Emma said firmly. "But children can learn. The question is, will you?" Through the station's communication array, Emma could hear the sound of change beginning. The neural cascade was spreading through the Calthac network, not as a weapon, but as a teacher. Their homeworld was receiving the collective wisdom of every species they had enslaved, every civilization they had destroyed. "The choice is yours," Emma said, standing and looking out at the stars beyond the station. "You can fight this gift and destroy yourselves, or you can accept it and become something greater than you ever imagined." Maya and Beck joined her at the viewport, their mission complete. Around them, the freed prisoners were taking control of the station with remarkable efficiency. Different species working together, sharing knowledge and resources, proving that cooperation was more powerful than conquest. "Captain," Maya said quietly, "Earth Command needs to know about this." "The implications are that we're not alone," Emma finished. "We never were. The galaxy is full of consciousness, of choice, of beings who understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down." Vex struggled to his feet, his eyes filled with something that might have been understanding. "The cascade, it's showing us things, memories, experiences we never knew. We never understood what we were destroying." "Now you do," Emma said. "The question is, what will you do with that knowledge?" As the Nexus station transformed from a processing facility into a center of learning and cooperation, Emma realized that this moment would be remembered as the turning point not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The Calthac Empire would survive, but it would never be the same. And in the depths of space, consciousness itself had learned something new about the power of choice, mercy, and the indomitable will of beings who refused to surrender hope. The bleeding had stopped. The teaching had begun.